As you're looking at it, the dark boxes or the dark circles on the map, the schematic, really represent revenue generating activities related to healthcare reform. So from a business perspective, I think that's one of the things that we need to recognize and plan for. This is the largest overhaul in years, and it represents really, for the most part, revenue generating activities. I want to point out some reasons why. First off, I think it's pretty clear when the Supreme Court allowed it based on the fact that it's a tax associated with it. There's revenue generating aspects of it throughout, penalties, taxes, whatever you want to call them. Why are those in existence, and what should we do as business owners? Let me ask you, how many are business owners here in the group? Okay. How many of you offer health insurance to your employees? Okay. How many of you saw 20%, maybe 30% increases in your health insurance in the last time you renewed?
Right, 43%.
43%. Okay. There's reasons for that. They're very complicated, but I think you can boil it down by one thing, and that's to say that everybody's trying to figure out how are we going to pay for all these people that we're going to cover. And I think in addition to that, how are we going to handle the coverages that the healthcare reform brings about? Those expansion in coverages, no lifetime limitations, and many of things that are currently limited because there's no cure or for reasons that it's difficult to figure out how to actually afford to provide lifelong care for somebody. You got to figure out how to pay for that stuff, and so that's why it's revenue generating. Let me talk about a couple of things here. We have a presentation we put together. I'm just going to pull some highlights out of it. Bear with me just a second. First off, I want to bring up something. If any of you are a small business, less than 50 employees, according to the way the law is structured right now, in fact, there's a number of different definitions of what a small business is in the Act. It's hard to figure out exactly how to draw the line. But there's two things. One, if you're under 50 employees, then you're exempted from participation or from the requirements that the Act brings about with regards to what kind of plans you offer. There's also what's called a small business tax credit. Oh, let me back up. You're exempted from some of those aspects as far as what health insurance that you offer and as far as being penalized, but you're not exempted from the costs associated with what I just mentioned, is how are we going to pay for the people and for some of the coverages that are being expanded. And so it's important for, even if you're a small business, you think you can skate out underneath the radar. That's not going to be the case from a cost perspective, and you've already recognized that. Hold on, because I think we're going to see another year or 2 years of some pretty hefty increases for those of us who are fully insured. Small business tax credit is an interesting aspect of the Act. I want to point out that to be eligible, the employer must have fewer than 25 full-time equivalents for the tax year. The average annual wages for the year must be less than $50,000, and the employer must pay premiums under a qualifying arrangement. And that's a legitimate health insurance vehicle is what a qualifying arrangement is. What's interesting about this is that the small business tax credit really is a bit of a shadow in some respects, because most small businesses, if you're a tax planner, and I'm not an expert in this, but I know enough to know that if you're an LLC or a sole proprietorship, you want to avoid having taxes associated with the business as much as possible. So you try to structure it so that you pay fewer taxes as a business. So the small business tax credit really amounts to a very small plus in terms of the small business, because it really doesn't apply if you're managing your business in a way to avoid as many taxes as possible. And that's something that came out, and we wanted to make sure that people understood. Look at it closely to determine whether or not your business, as a small business, is going to be able to benefit. So that's one thing that business needs to look at your business needs to look at is what advantages does the Healthcare Reform Act bring with it? And will that small business tax credit actually be something that you can take advantage of? Some of the benefits limitations that are lifted, I just want to run down here brief so that we're clear about what it adds. Ambulatory services, emergency services, hospitalization, maternity, newborn, mental health, substance abuse, prescription drugs. I'd say mental health and substance abuse and prescription drugs are two of the most costly elements in terms of lifting limitations. And then preventative and wellness, chronic disease management also. So there's a lot of cost. So let's talk about the tax here real quick too. If you opt out as a business, you'll have to pay $2,000 a year because you're not participating in offering health insurance to your employees. If you do offer health insurance to your employees, and I think Sharon said, and I agree, is that most employers are going to continue to do that because it's still part of that total compensation package, and people want to be competitive in terms of their ability to hire folks. So if you do that and someone decides that they want to opt out of your benefits and they go to the exchange, as a business you'll have to pay $3,000 as a penalty because that person went to the exchange. What a lot of people don't realize is that when that person goes to the exchange, you also get charged for the voucher that they take with them, which is the amount of the insurance that you currently pay for them on your program. So if, for example, you're a $40,000 a year employee, there's a limitation on the cost associated with when you come to the exchange. It'll cost $1,600 or 4%. That's what it will cost them to purchase in the exchange. Now, the business may be paying, let's say, $2,400 a year currently, which is not that's an average amount. Actually, on the low side, $2,400 for that person to carry insurance with your business. So what it amounts to is if I work for you, I decide to go to the exchange, you get to pay $3,000 as a penalty for me going there, plus you get to pay $2,400 also as part of that voucher system. But it's only going to cost me, at making $40,000 a year, $1,600. So where's that other $800 go? It doesn't come back to you as the employer. It stays in the pool to help pay for some of these coverages that the Act expands. So as a business owner, you need to begin to think about fully insured, self-insured, because if you're self-insured, you're exempted from some of the costs associated with the coverages that are going to be offered. So we're going to learn a lot of new terms. We're going to learn a lot of new interesting financial implications for the Act that we're going to have to plan for, whether you're a small business or a large business.